Today we're going to talk about the fat that rises to the top of your beef bone broth when you refrigerate it. It's called tallow, and we're going to talk about what to do with that. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest. I'm a former New York City girl, now living the simple life with my sweet husband here in the Texas Hill Country. And this channel is all about cooking from scratch, living naturally, and creating a cozy home with charming thrift store finds. So if you're like me and you want to live the simple life, be sure to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. As I've shared with you in the past, when I make chicken bone broth, I defat it first, and then I store it in 2-cup containers that I put in my freezer. And then I save the chicken fat, the schmaltz, to use in various recipes, especially when making chicken livers, chopped chicken livers. Now when I make beef bone broth, I do things a little differently, because usually my chicken broth I just use for recipes like making chicken soup, or gravies, and so on and so forth. But beef broth is something my husband and I tend to drink every morning with breakfast. So I always like to keep a nice big jar like this, a half-a-gallon jar, in my fridge, ready to scoop some out and heat it for our morning drink with our breakfast. And when I make my beef bone broth in my slow cooker, I tend to get about 2 of these. And I usually defat it all as I'm getting ready to decant it. But what I then do is the 1 jar I leave with no fat on top and put it right into my fridge, and I'm ready to go the next morning, scoop it out, heat it up, drink it, so on and so forth. But with my 2nd jar, since it'll be a few days before we get to it, I like to add back in a little fat. Now I've, defatted it, and I usually have a container. If you watch my beef bone broth video, I have a container where I'm putting the fat into that as I'm defatting the bone broth. But it's still hot and still liquidy, and I'll pour a little on top of my 2nd jar to work as a seal to keep this fresh while we're waiting to use it, rather than having to freeze it. And then when I'm ready to use this, I'll just take the cap off and I'll cut this beef fat and I'll pull it right out. Now I save it because I do use tallow, beef fat is known as tallow, for cooking. Because I know some of you have said to me, what are you doing with the fat in that video when I did my beef bone broth video where I defat the beef bone broth? We just like to drink it that way. We find it a little more pleasing, to the palate. But everybody's different. Some people like to leave the beef fat in, and that's fine too. It's very nutritious, and I definitely don't discard it. You know me, I don't waste anything, and I'm definitely not going to waste something as nutritious as tallow. So I save it, and it's wonderful for cooking. I fry up potatoes in it. I fry up all different types of vegetables. If I'm making some kind of stew or with meat, I'll put a little in to brown my meat. I even use it to pop popcorn. Popcorn popped in, that's a hard one to say. Popcorn popped in tallow is delicious. And I believe it may have been how popcorn was made years ago. And you can't go wrong with tallow when it comes to making French fries. You fry up French fries in tallow, they're going to be out of this world. So normally what I've got in here is less than all of the tallow that I have from defatting my bone broth. So the majority of it I simply store away in my refrigerator and use throughout the following weeks, to cook and so on and so forth. And then this piece, when we're ready, after a few days that we finish the other jar of bone broth, all I'll do is, just try to cut it up. It comes out pretty easily. And then I just try to scrape as much broth off as I can. You see, my broth is very gelatinous. You know me, I'm always talking about making a good gelatinous broth. And I'll talk about that in another video. But I just get off as much as I can. And then I'll just put this aside. And usually what I'll do is remelt it in a little pot. And that way, once it's melted, then I can pour it into my container that I store my tallow in my fridge. If you'd like to learn more about bone broth and tallow and schmaltz, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click over here where I have a short playlist all about bone broth. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.